Jason, appreciate your time, brother, man. It's been a joy to watch your growth, in progress building RootNote, for the past couple years. But I want to take it back to the beginning. Every founder has that inception story. So can you talk about the initial concept and idea of RootNote, how you got started building this company?
Yeah, definitely, Malcolm. It's great to be here. It's been fun getting to know you over the years as well. And yeah, super excited to be here. And yeah, RootNote's definitely been a journey. It's funny, the initial company is completely different from what it is today. The initial idea was basically came out of a thesis that I did in grad school, and it was the idea was basically to invest into creators the way you would startups. So what we would do is we would set up a holding company that the creator owned. We'd invest into that. The holding company basically had multiple subsidiaries underneath it. So if you're a multi-hyphenate creator doing a lot of different things, maybe you've got a merch store on Shopify, you do some live touring, you've got a podcast, you're making money in a lot of different ways. The idea was to create an entity that kind of rolled all of that up, and then we would invest in that entity for a small exchange of equity. At the time, we were spoiler alert, we were too early, but at the time, really the only way to finance a business like that was through debt. Because they were very, risky. There were some, great products and platforms around like Spotter that were doing it specifically on YouTube revenue, and there were a couple of music industry products that were doing it specifically with like copyright royalties, things like that. But there was nothing that kind of comprehensively looked at the content creator as a business. So that's kind of where we got our start in the creator economy, and this was over a decade ago. And then what it evolved into is my background is in spreadsheets and PowerPoint, and I'm the guy doing kind of the numbers crunching and the diligence on these prospective opportunities. And, I'm just kind of looking at all of these different data points, all of these different income streams, all of these different areas, as you know, as a content creator, where your data lives, in all of these different silos. And, the question that just kept coming up is like how do you deal with this as like an individual content creator? Like how do you actually understand how your business is doing? And what we kept running into is we were out there looking for products that would solve our problem of doing diligence on these prospective investments, or becoming a business partner with a creator. And we just kept running in all this enterprise software that was incredibly expensive, really overly complex. It was built for data science teams at multinational corporates. It really wasn't built for that individual
Yeah.
kind of platform business. So that's how we got into it. All kind of along the journey. As I mentioned, I've been more of like the business and ops person, and then my brother, who's one of our co-founders, he's a content creator and has been all of his life. So we kind
Dope.
of looked at this problem of, yeah, how can we team up and solve a problem that we both deeply care about, which is, I think ultimately we've always wanted to make it easier for creators to build and run businesses. We started on the capital allocation side, and then we realized that software is actually it's a better business model
Yeah.
than making investments. But
Really
um,
cool.
yeah, so fun journey to get here, and it's enabled me to meet a lot of great people along the way, which we've had some cool kind of full circle moments as well. So.
Got you. Really cool, man. And so as the platform stands today, like how are creators, like what metrics do you guys track? How are creators using RootNote as a tool and a resource to help build their business and their brands?
Yeah, great question. So we pitch RootNote as kind of Canva meets Tableau for digital content creators and creative teams. The idea is that we do want to make data so easy that believe it or not, 16-year-old who's getting NIL deal now,
Yeah.
NIL deals now can use the platform. So we help track social content and commerce data across kind of all of your different platforms and products. So some of them have APIs, some of them it's just upload a CSV file. You can add your own brand deal revenue if you want to do that, but we make it really easy to get all of your data from your different kind of platforms. And then we like to say that we help people tell stories with data. So the first thing that we normally do is we help creators kind of create or launch a media kit. A lot of creators have a media kit that maybe it lives in Canva or PowerPoint or some type of kind of presentation product. Or maybe they've got it through like another software platform. The challenge that we found is that it's really hard to tell your story using data in the confines of like a lot of existing products. Like it's not very customizable. Like maybe you just want to talk about your YouTube channel and you just want to highlight that. Or maybe you just want to talk about Substack and that's what you're focused on. It gets pretty challenging to do that. So we make these really easy to build dynamic reports that you can use as, like I said, a media kit, a brand or a partner reports if you want to go back and report to partners on how the content you created for them do. Or we do also have a more like B2B facing product where sports teams or media companies that kind of own and operate a lot of their own media channels or work with a lot of content creators, they can track data across not only one creator but their entire portfolio from a few to a few thousand, kind of depending on scale. So
Yeah.
yeah, super excited about where kind of everything is going, and we've got everyone from college and pro athletes to professional mermaids using the product. So a pretty wide variety of, as you know, of content creators out there.
That's super interesting. And you mentioned NIL, and I think that's a good place to kind of tailor this question for an athlete, because obviously we're seeing athletes starting to think about building their brands at younger ages, looking at high school athletes who are getting NIL deals. For an athlete who is starting to think about opportunities outside of sports, what do you think is like the first step they should take as far as trying to build their brand or build a business around themselves as a creator or outside of an athlete?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think a lot of what we see people kind of gravitate towards is, I play basketball, therefore I'm a basketball creator. Well, it's like, what is your unique perspective? Like, what do you want to create content around, right? Like, how do you build a brand that is not just that you're really good at a sport. That's fine that that's part of it, but it's kind of like, what is your unique point of view on life? Like what is going to kind of help you tell a story that's going to be compelling? And no one wants to think about life after sports, but like, what is that brand that's going to go with you? And it can evolve over time, right? I mean, like Taylor Swift today is not the same Taylor Swift she was when she was 14, but she built that brand then and it's evolved kind of over time. Similar to how we're seeing kind of a lot of athletes transition from playing sports into pros or even existing athletes. Like I love using Alona Mara as an example of someone who had a really strong, presence in the content world as a creator who, capitalized obviously on the Olympics last year and used that to really catapult her brand. But, she had been building and working on her brand for years before it really took off. So I think kind of that, initial kind of step, it's like, all right, it's like, what do you enjoy talking about? Like, and what do you actually want to talk about? Because it's like, if it feels like a job, like it's going to be hard. And it will feel like a job sometimes, but if it's something you're interested and passionate about talking about, that's the greatest kind of jumping off point. And then I think a lot of things too, with like, as as a uh, you know, former pro athlete. And it's just one of those things where, you're busy and you're constantly getting pulled in a million different directions. So it's like, how do you just figure out a way to consistently create? Because you go out there and you talk to any person who's, built a YouTube channel for themselves or for another company, like the first thing that they're going to tell you is it takes consistency and time. And I think a lot of, high performers, they're looking at things just to take off, right? If they do well or if they're good at it. And the reality is sometimes that just takes time. So I think, getting back to the root of the question, it's like, what do you tell? It's like, just like expect for it to take a while, pick subject matter that like you like and enjoy talking about. So it feels fun to you and then experiment, like don't be afraid to try new different things, I promise you an Instagram post that you created or reel or whatever, it's not going to define who you are, right? So it's kind of get out there, try and try again too. Jeremy uses an example a lot of literally posting the exact same content that he did a year later and it, going viral.
Hmm.
Nothing was different about it other than the fact that he'd spent some time building the brand and the engagement on that platform, and then it took off.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's probably a whole, semester full of like just learnings that we've got from this stuff. But yeah,
That's
there's no better time in the present, right?
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And then I also want to ask about common mistakes. Are there any like overlying mistakes that you see a lot of athletes making when they're starting to get their brand off the ground? Whether that's like a emphasis, too much emphasis on like the follower count, or the type of content they're creating. Like, are there any mistakes that you commonly see athletes making when they're starting to build their brand?
Yeah, I think it depends on kind of what angle you're going for, but a lot of times we'll see people go in and just like completely delete everything, right? They'll go in and they'll want like a clean slate. And I can understand that too, but it's not bad to have a little bit of like a track record or a
Yeah,
history like on a platform, right? Like I promise you it looks better to have, maybe like 20 posts that kind of show your evolution than to have like two that your school posted for you, right? Or that they did a collab post for you. So, I think, not being afraid to kind of just like build from what you've got as opposed to feeling like you have to start over from brand new. Um, I think those are probably like some of the biggest, like just like getting started hurdles. I'd say the other thing that a lot of athletes struggle with, and it's not as much of a mistake as it's just like it's consistency.
yeah,
And it's going back to that thing where, yes, it is challenging, but if you want to grow like authentically and like, throughout the season, even when you're not in season, it's gonna be building a pattern of consistent content creation. And, I think especially now, even with like some schools are launching like courses in NIL management or content creation, it's like the good news is like you're not alone. Like maybe you've got a roommate or a buddy who can kind of help you manage, your schedule and your time. But I would say like absolutely just like consistent creation is critical if you're trying to build and launch something that's going to last.
100% agree. How important is platform diversification? Because I think about this all the time. I'm obviously like hyper focused on LinkedIn. It's where I spend majority of my time, but I find myself wanting to build on IG and Twitter and be all these different places. So how do you think about that for athletes? Should they only kind of hone in and focus on one platform, or is it more conducive to kind of spread themselves among different places to reach a wider audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think, maybe like 10 years ago you had more of an excuse to not be everywhere, but the challenge I think well today it's like you don't know necessarily where that moment's going to happen. And it's also just a lot easier to cross post and create,
Yeah.
short form that lives, YouTube, you've got your shorts and then IG, you've got Reels and TikTok. Like a lot of the formatting is the same. So I think it is easier. And it is important because like your audiences are going to vary a little bit based on what platform you're on, right? Like your X audience is going to be different than TikTok, which is going to be different from Instagram, which is going to be different from Facebook, which is also like different from YouTube. So it's kind of one of those things where yes, it is important, but at the same time, like don't let it overwhelm you. If all you have bandwidth to focus on is like TikTok and Instagram, then start there. Build that first, build the audience there, and then focus on other platforms. We didn't even talk about threads, right? There's even
Yeah.
like kind of questions around it's like, okay, do I get started now on X or do I focus my effort and energy on threads? And the challenge is like these platforms and algorithms are constantly changing. But I think what's really important too that it's not a mistake, but the most and it's obviously you're doing a great job of this as a creator, but it's building and owning your audience. So the idea is that if you do build that audience on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or all of them, then the next question is like, well, then how do you start building that email list? Or how do you start capturing that first party data so that you're not as reliant on, one platform for communication? I got asked the other day, it's like, what are the implications of like what's going on with TikTok right now? It's like Honestly, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I'm not in those rooms. It's like, is it going to be multiple APIs, multiple data sources? There are a lot of unknowns. What's going to happen with that platform now? It could change, it could not change at all. But the point is, like, if you create the funnel where if you look at socials as your top of funnel and then focus on acquiring those cell phone numbers, your email addresses, or whatever it might be, exclusive content, email or newsletters, things like that, you're going to be in a much better position than if your brand is totally dependent on, one or two platforms.
I love that advice. And then looking at the monetization angles, because that's also a metric that you guys track as well. Like, do you feel like I felt well personally, I feel like a lot of athletes may be over reliant on brand deals and sponsorships and not building monetization channels and products that they can have more ownership over. How do you kind of strike a balance between the two? Do you think every athlete has a pathway to maybe create a consumer product or have their own brand, that they can monetize, or is relying on brand deals and sponsorships, maybe on social media enough for most athletes to try to go after?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think being an athlete is an incredible opportunity to build an audience, right? Like, never again, well, unless you're very rare, are you going to have
Yeah.
the opportunity to be in front of so many people in a platform where people just are naturally going to care about what you're doing because they care about the school, they care about the team, right? Like, you have a captive audience just based on the sheer fact of where you're at. Then I think the question becomes like, okay, you've got that audience, maybe you land some brand deals from that audience. It's like, can you create the content or the platform? I think like Angel Reese has done a really good job of it with her Bayou Barbie brand, right? The thing is, like, that takes work and that takes a team.
Yeah.
Can anybody do that now? Yes. Like, that's the beautiful thing about it. It's like, if you have that drive and passion, because you can just launch a merch store on Shopify, or there's a ton of other products, right? You can launch a fan club on, like Patreon or Fourth Wall. There are all of different membership platforms. So you definitely can. I think ultimately, and going back real quick before I forget, our initial idea was this investment model for investing in creators. Well, now like Slow Ventures is scaling this concept. They are investing into creators that have communities. So like, I think to the extent that you do believe you can build a passionate community and the product, there's kind of product community fit where maybe you are like a really great designer and you've been designing your own like sneakers and you want to build and sell to that audience, like, absolutely. But I think we're going to see a lot more of the former, a lot more brand deals and athletes capitalize on NIL than, productizing. The other thing that I'll say though about this is like landing brand deals while you're focused on your own career is an excellent way to get the skill set to go out and do it for someone else too. So you learn how to build, manage your own brand, then you can go run that for an SMB, a startup, a large corporation, doing that exact same thing. So I think whether or not you decide to productize your own brand, the skill set of landing brand deals in NIL is something that you can absolutely take with you to, the next step, whatever that might be.
hmm What's one thing you wish every athlete understood about their data before they started building a brand?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think the one thing that most athletes think of, and I think kind of mentioned this earlier, is that you have to have this really large audience, right? Or you have to have this really large following. But going back to the previous question, it's like it's not the following, it's going to be the community and the engagement. So you could have an audience of 10,000 highly engaged, passionate fans that love your content that's ultimately more valuable than 100,000 people who just kind of check in every once in a while. So I think a big misconception is that you have to be really large in order to kind of capitalize on these brand deals. And I mean, what we're seeing just more broadly in the creator economy is that brands are going micro. They're looking for niche. They're looking for engagement. They want people who have a point of view, something to say, because they want to tap into that, right? They can spend, they can create ad campaigns. What they can't do is directly reach your community. So if you have that voice with your community, no matter what size it is, you're going to be an interesting, you know, candidate for brand deals.
Hmm. And long term, like how do you see RootNote evolving as more athletes become creators, investors, entrepreneurs? Like what role do you really want RootNote to kind of play in that role? And then also like where do you see the creator economy in the next like decade?
Yeah, no, I love this question. Like our vision of RootNote is to build what we call is like this consumer layer of business intelligence. Like no matter what your vertical, no matter whether you're an athlete or maybe a more traditional influencer or a startup founder, we want RootNote to be the place that you go to kind of build, understand, and tell your story with data. And we're making a bet that the future of really just like advertising in general is going to be based around, both paid and organic content. That's how brands are connecting with their audiences. So we see a huge opportunity to tap into that. And then as far as where the creator economy is going, kind of similar to the trends that we're seeing is I think the definition of who a creator is has changed dramatically in the past 10 years, right? Now we're talking about athletes as creators, and some athletes have built some really powerful brands as creators. I mentioned Alona earlier. And we're seeing startup founders that are building brands before they even ship product, right? We're seeing companies that are really investing back into organic social because they know that's the way they can go out and kind of tell their story. So our whole thesis is that really everyone is a creator. The question is just going to be, kind of how you lean into that. So, but yeah, and then I think like I'd say like creator economy in general. We're seeing more and more brands invest more into it. I think Unilever was a good example earlier this year that kind of had mentioned, and I didn't get to go to Cannes this year, but I heard it was quite a good time, and it seems like most most brands are on board with looking at creators. The world of like UGC, I think AI is going to play an important role. I think consumers are. I think consumers are pretty smart. And I think we know when things are authentic versus inauthentic. And so I think we're probably going to see kind of a little bit of a push and pull with whether or not you're using AI generated content or kind of more creator organic content. But yeah, it's an exciting time to be building in the space.
Yeah, you beat me to it, but my last question is with AI obviously playing a role in the major role in the creator economy. I actually saw I think it was yesterday, there was a artist that got a $3 million deal. It was an AI generated musical artist that got a $3 million deal, which I thought was super fascinating. But when you see headlines like that, it makes you wonder like should athletes and human creators be concerned when it comes to AI and people who are using these bots and creating AI avatars taking away market share or opportunities from human based creators? Do you think that's a concern at all?
I think like the landscape is obviously going to get more noisy, with more content, it may become harder to get discovered. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think as humans, we're looking for human connection. So, I'm not worried about it. I see AI as a valuable tool that creators can, really lean into. There's some copyright issues that need to be sorted out in the music space, and really making sure that we're properly attributing copyrighted works, and especially a lot of like generative AI content. It's going to be important to make sure that those original creators are getting kind of credited with that work. And I think we're still in figure it out territory, and it's probably going to be rocky for a few years. But yeah, look, I look at it as an opportunity. I think that there's plenty of room, and at the end of the day, uh, it's going to be hard to sell tickets to watching, a bunch of AI generated content play a game on TV. It's like that's why sports teams are selling for record rates right now, right?
Yep.
It's that live in-person human fan experience that we crave too. I think especially as the world gets a little bit more uh, digital.
100%. Jason, man, I appreciate your time. Lastly, can you let people know where they can, find out more about RootNote, but also connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's a pleasure as always, Malcolm. So you can learn more about RootNote at www.rootnote.co. We just launched a free version of our product. So jump in there, check it out. Let me know what you think. You can send any positive feedback to Jason at rootnote.co, and you can send anything you don't like to Jeremy at rootnote.co.
I love it, man. Thank you, Jason.
All right. Thanks, Malcolm.